The Spanish language is the second most common first language spoken in the world behind Mandarin, and it's spoken in over 20 countries globally. So suffice it to say, there's an enormous diversity in the language, and there are many different ways to speak Spanish. And so this video is not at all here to tell you how you should speak Spanish per se, but it is how to tell you how you should speak Spanish or how you should pronounce a certain part of Spanish if you want to speak Peninsular Spanish. That is, the Spanish is spoken in the Iberian Peninsula in Europe. You have to get used to one particular sound, the coronal fricative. It's that sound, TH, and it appears in Spanish whenever the consonant C appears before the vowels E or I, or whenever we see a Z in Spanish. So good examples are cerveza, Zaragoza, ciudad, no? Now this is actually a pretty odd feature when you think about it, because that coronal fricative is a fairly rare consonant. I mean, it's an odd sound. In European languages that I know of, it's only English and Greek that have this. And I don't think it's particularly common elsewhere throughout the world either. And even Spanish, of course, doesn't employ it consistently, because in Latin American Spanish and in Andalusian Spanish, so Spanish is spoken in the south of Spain, we don't really see this coronal fricative. What Spanish speakers call a ceceo at times. Now, this is often mislabeled the Castilian Lisp. And that's wrong, partially because it's not only restricted to Castile, and secondly, it's also not technically a lisp, right? A lisp is only really a mistake, right? If I were small and I was talking to you with a lisp, then it's very clear to you that I'm making a mistake, right? And it's kind of cute when kids do this, but it's very clear that that's not the way they should be speaking. So firstly, it's not a lisp. A second misconception that's associated with this, and I addressed it in a previous video, but I'd like to go into more depth here, is that the Spanish lisp is what we might call a prestige borrowing. Now that's in sociolinguistics. That describes a phenomenon where one sort of desired group will pronounce something a certain way, and then that pronunciation will be extended as people desire, in the population in general, desires to associate themselves with that particular minority. In this case, the prestige is supposedly the king Pedro el Cruel, or el Justo of Castile. This is in medieval Spain. And his chancellor, the only really historical kind of background or strength that this misconception might have is that Pedro el Cruel's chancellor, Pedro López de Ayala, in one of his chronicles, El Crónica del Rey Don Pedro, mentions that he ceceaba un poco, that Pedro of Castile ceceaba un poco, he lisped a little. But of course, there's a huge jump between one king lisping and then everyone in that society speaking with that particular coronal fricative. There's also no causal evidence that those two are all related in any of the linguistic records that we have. Now, there are many channels that have already addressed this really interesting coronal fricative. So I'm not going to go into too much more detail about it, but what I do want to say is I'd like to take this opportunity to recommend another excellent Spanish channel. It really is probably the very tip-top of Spanish linguistic channels, Linguriosa. Elena, the host of Linguriosa, is, frankly speaking, a genius, and she's an inspiration to anyone who wants to learn more about Spanish and wants to speak Spanish better. So I strongly recommend that you take a look at her channel, subscribe to it, watch it regularly, because there really is no better way of learning about the Spanish language. And I will say then, hasta la próxima. You look like a charming and a delightful person to be around. And I'm here to tell you that you're in good company. You see, the Language Learners Club specifically selects applicants so that we only have people just like you. If you're at all interested in learning foreign languages, if you're a student or a teacher of languages, or you simply just want to participate in the beautiful cultures that are associated with the languages that we love, join our group and join our club in the description below. I can't wait to see you.